How do you move from being somebody who's lived in their heads most of their lives to somebody who's trying to live in the present moment and be more in their body? That's what I've sort of been going through the past year. So I just wanted to talk through 5 tips for living in the present moment that I think have helped me. The first one is equate quiet with luxury. And the way I would describe this is, if you've seen the movie Parasite, I remember a review of that movie talking about how space and quiet are like a wealth. So it's not really about the size of the house, but actually just having peace and quiet is sort of something to really cherish. It's something, if you're lucky enough to have, that actually is like a luxury. It's just kind of something I've been thinking about, because a lot of times, like, I live by myself, and the way I used to view it, because I had a very depressed mind, was, that it was terrible and I was lonely, and, I looked around and saw it a certain way. I didn't like silence. I would fill it with daydreams, and, I wasn't existing as myself in any moment. And now I can actually look at things differently, and I actually think to myself, when it's quiet and when it's peaceful, like, oh, this is a luxury I'm experiencing right now. And even if, like, for you, maybe you need to be like putting on headphones and some quiet music, if you find that moment of quiet, that's something to actually be enjoyed. I don't know how to describe it, but it's just like, I suppose it's like the loneliness and alone divide, but it's just a calmness and a appreciation for quiet and space. And especially, if you're always have been fighting with your brain, if you're able to like eke out these moments of quiet in your brain, then it truly is like a gift. So yeah, it's maybe like a strange way to put it, but that's just the way I've been thinking about it. So that's my number 1 tip. Number 2 is to consume quality art. A lot of the times, if you struggle to stay in the moment, or you struggle to focus, if you're just putting on random stuff on TV, and then you're wondering like, oh, why can't I focus? Like, I think, a lot of like people who have like more regular brains can just watch like show after show and they'll get kind of engaged, but it might be more tricky for you to do that, and like putting on something might not even really distract you, or it might not kind of center you. And I've been watching a lot of old movies recently, like kind of classics from the 30s and 40s. And I had an experience last week where I was watching the Philadelphia Story, and it had Cary Grant and Jimmy Stewart and Katharine Hepburn. And as I was watching it, I had this feeling like, oh, I'm so lucky to be alive and to see this. And that occurred to me that, I just wouldn't be thinking that when I was watching like a regular like Netflix show that came up. Like, I really did feel, oh wow, like what I'm seeing here is like so special. Like the writing, the acting, the comedy, like so much work has gone into that. And you can feel the quality, and then the quality inspires you to feel more creative and more alive. I just felt very alive watching it, and I can't describe it, but I've been thinking about it a lot, and I think that actually does actually make sense, that when you engage or you consume like real quality, the top quality of things, and a lot of these movies are like the top quality of movies, then it really does center you, and it does inspire you. And that, I think, we're looking to exist in our body and in the present moment, so you want to feel inspired, you want to feel alive. And if you find, a lot of the times, like regular, Netflix shows are just not giving you that centered moment, I would say, trying to look for the best of everything that you can consume. Like, I think that's made a really big difference for me. Like, after I watched that movie, I was then like researching about older movies, and I was researching about like the first movies that were made, and I was like commonplacing about it. I mean, it just inspires me like to see like the best of something. So yeah, I would really recommend that. Number 3 is notice what is around you when you're on walks. This is probably something you've heard before, and when I talked about the maladaptive daydreaming issue and how you can stop it, obviously one of the big things is to stop listening to music. It's a little bit sad, but you're probably better off not listening to music, especially like when you're out walking. I've mostly been going just without headphones, without listening to anything. I do a walk in the morning, and in the morning what I like to do is look around and see something and think about it. So it's kind of like I'm not just noticing, I'm noticing something, then I'm trying to, develop a thought about it. Just for example, like I live in a city, so I see a lot of buildings. Almost every time I look up or I look somewhere, I can see something new or I can notice something new. And I think, if you focus on noticing, you will start to see new things and it will give you new thoughts. I think, as somebody who is maladaptive daydreaming most of their life or felt in depression most of their life, it's very time consuming on your thoughts. And, I just started to feel like I have no high quality thoughts. I have no quality thoughts. I am like really just someone who doesn't think, because my thinking was all consumed with daydreaming or with depression about myself. So I very rarely kind of looked out and actually thought about things. And I always used to think, oh, it must be so wonderful to think like more deeply or to think about things. So, one thing I am doing now is I am, noticing like a new statue and thinking about when it was built and, what it represents, or noticing. I think like I've walked past this building about 1 million times and I just noticed it was a hotel. So I'm thinking like, how did I not know that? But these are like the things that you see, and then, you can kind of notice artwork around you. And yeah, I would just say, it sounds like it's boring not having your headphones, because if you're used to listening to music, it does feel boring, and you don't want to let yourself ruminate either. And that's why I think it's really important that you actually be looking around and consciously, see something and engage with it and think a thought about it. So I hope that makes sense. The next one I would say is stretch and feel in your body. I don't want to say do yoga, because yoga maybe sounds like a little bit of more effort, but I'm actually talking about just stretching and moving your body. And I never used to understand like what was the big deal of stretching, and I don't know if that's something that as you get older, like stretching just feels really good. But if I stretch and I can actually like feel my body, and I think maybe it is like getting older as well, but then also this appreciation of this connection with my brain and my body, because these two things never connected before. If you maladaptive daydream, you're very much not in your body. So for a long time, I've just felt like not in my body. It's just like my body is just there carrying around my brain. And when I stretch and you're like putting the focus actually on your body, I think, it's really like a special feeling, and you're getting to focus on your body and you get to like appreciate like the miracle of having a fully functional body, or having whatever you have and whatever you're capable of doing. You should keep doing that until you can. I just think I sometimes have really special moments where I'm just stretching. I'm like, this feels so good, and I'm so in my body, and I feel like so alive. And it's like, on the surface, like I'm not really doing anything that special, but it just feels like this, this like brain body harmony. I think actually the word yoga means like balance or harmony or something. It means something like that, which I mean I'm just actually describing what yoga is. I think that's all about balancing your brain and your body. But for some people, maybe yoga sounds a little bit intimidating. So it literally just is about stretching your body in the way that feels good. I do recommend yoga, and there's loads of like yoga YouTube videos which are really, really helpful to use. Like that's been one of the best things for me actually, because you know it's just like something you can do to get into your body, and that is really what helps a lot. I think like people always say that obviously like doing physical activity is so good for your brain, and I think that's really, really true. And the last one is sit on the ground and look at books. This is kind of random, but like I have a lot of different kind of coffee table type pretty books that like I'll get at Christmases or birthdays, or I haven't spent a lot of time with them. And sometimes I'm just like, I'm just going to like sit on the ground, cross-legged, and take a bit of time and kind of look through these books. And actually just doing something like silent and basic like that, you're just giving yourself a moment. You're consuming something that you want to look over, but it's sometimes just sitting there. And this can be like for anything you've got. I just think like the act of sitting on the ground sometimes really centers me, or like just makes me feel more alive in a strange way. You know, if you're like you've got all these things around you, but you don't actually take the time to kind of sit down and sit with them. Like this could be any kind of collection you've got, or like anything you have, just to like take a little bit of time like on the ground and going through something. And I suppose it's back to talking about like high quality art. It's like you're kind of savouring something and savouring a moment. And I think, that's really what it's all about. I think like every moment you live in, that you feel very present. Especially, if you've struggles with maladaptive daydreaming, like you'll understand like how precious that is. So I suppose, I wanted to make this video just to talk about, how you get to the other side, and how it's these kind of small things that are going to make you feel healthier. I think, a lot of people think, if I'm not maladaptive daydreaming, what am I going to replace that with? And like, they're thinking like you need to have a really intense hobby, like you would need to make sure that you've got a way to fill all these hours. And I don't think that's the way to think of it. I think actually you want to be at that space where you could just be all right with the silence and the quiet. And again, if you haven't watched my other videos, I talk about getting treated for OCD and, the medication, the therapy, the talking. So I don't want you to think like this is something I've been able to do all by myself. Like I'm getting a lot of help for maladaptive daydreaming. But this is, I feel like, this is like the next step, and this is where I wanted to be. And I really think like it's these small things that are important. If you can live in the smallest, most boring moments, and you can find joy in them and comfort and peace, I think, you become very powerful. So yeah, it's like 7:30 in the morning. I'm sitting here. It's quiet. It's nice. I'm not stressing. I just wanted to talk about this. So yeah, if you've got any other tips for, how to live more presently, then please do leave a comment and let us know. And yeah, like and subscribe if you can, or if you want to. And thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.